Hello and welcome to Valley Sports Telegram. And this is our week zero wrap up. It was an exciting week of football. There's a lot of things that we kind of learned. And in that same vein, we have a lot of good questions. Not to the point where we would have questions about what we're looking at, but questions of, hey, these programs might have actually turned a corner. And now we got to figure out just who they are. We're going to jump right in. There was a lot of action. I'm going to go over the scores. But first, Kenny, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing excellent. Football is back. Week zero is always exciting because it's a chance for teams to kind of get out. Teams that got new offenses get out there and see what you got. An opportunity for these coaches with live ammunition, live rounds to kind of take all the work you put in the off season and roll it out. And guess what? We, like you, just piggybacking off of what you said, we saw some things that kind of raise some eyebrows as to what potentially could be in the Valley this season. So I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Jump right in with a grudge match of sorts. Our leader went into Canoga and came away really handily. It was a 57-0 thumping. It looks like Canoga is very much in the middle of a rebuild. And Arleta did what you're supposed to do when you're facing a program like that. Chatsworth went to Monroe in another rematch, and Isaiah Ramon, like he said during the West Valley League Media Day, he was learning to trust his line. Well, he did that, and he had over 250 rushing yards. The final there, like I said, 48-22. Birmingham traveled to Royal, and they came away comprehensive. It was 60-0. Chavez took their ground attack and chewed up View Park. It was 56-6. El Camino went into Palisades and put up a battle, but was unable to find the scoreboard. It was 29-0. San Fernando put a decent number on Grant. That was a 45-20 final. Campbell Hall winner North Hollywood came away with a 21-6 victory. This was a good test for North Hollywood facing a Southern Section program. And last year, the results were not as close, if I remember correctly. Poly went into Hollywood and came away losers down 19-7. Panorama hosted LA in the first game on Friday. It was a 3 p.m. start in the middle of all that heat. But they did what they do. They ran. It was a quick game, finished 38-6. Reseda went into Fairfax in year 2 of their agreement to go head-to-head. This was a 36-0 loss. Now, I spoke with Coach Ward. Real quickly, I'll let you know that they battled kind of all the way to the end, and there was no running clock at the start of the second half. It was 28-0, and they battled, and they only gave up the one score. So that's looking really good for the fight of that program. Sylmar went into Huntington Park, and we'll go a little deeper on this one a little bit, but they came away 40-14. That was an impressive outing for them. Verdugo Hills traveled to Roybal and came away decisively. It was a 52-6 victory for them. Interestingly, we had a tie. Both coaches decided they would allow the game to end in a tie. Granada Hills and Franklin finished 28-28. And what I kind of dubbed a sleeper game to keep an eye on. Taft hosted Westlake, but Westlake kind of ran away, and Kenny will have more on that in a moment. It was a 59-13 final. And finally, our game of the week, Cleveland traveled to Kennedy and won by 3 scores, 49-27. That game was actually pretty evenly fought in a lot of ways, but Cleveland took advantage of the opportunities they needed to and walked away with the week 0 win.
Well, it's funny. Like I said, coming into week 0, it's an opportunity for fresh starts, for things so to start anew, things you might have been kind of working on, or programs that kind of want to come into the season, wanting to see just where they were. Week 0 is a great litmus test because you're going to be playing against non-league opponents. You're going to get a chance to kind of sort of test your mettle. And we saw some really, really positive things from a lot of programs here in the Valley. Panorama coming to mind. That was just a really strong showing, coming off of back-to-back years being this close to winning a championship, winning a city championship. You wanted to see, even with them graduating guys from their program, they came out, they did what they needed to do against a Los Angeles team that they should have beat, and they handled business. NoHo, we weren't expecting them to beat Campbell Hall, but what do we want to see? We wanted to see maturity, we wanted to see growth in that program, and they hung tough with a really tough Southern Section opponent that was talented, and they didn't get their doors blown off. They hung in the fight, and they fought them tooth and nail. So that was positive. San Fernando, we know the tough season they had last year. There were a lot of questions about what was going on in terms of the inconsistency in their play. What did they do? Against a Grant team they're definitely in a not necessarily a rebuild, but a retool because of how young they are. And if you're a senior laden bunch, you go in there and you lay the hammer, and that's what they did. So that was positive to see from them and what they might do in the Valley Mission. Like you said, what more can you say about Ramo at Chatsworth? I mean, it was the sort of performance that we might have been expecting from him, knowing that they got beat by Monroe last year, and that team was going to want to walk into Monroe's building with some receipts and kind of hand some things back to him. And Ramo did exactly what we've been used to seeing him do. But the caveat being a little bit more patient, a little more trusting in playing behind his line. And that kind of led to him having 200 plus yards against a really stout team that can play some defense. So that might be a indicator of some big things to come for them this year. Verdugo looked good in a way in which you wanted to see Jackson's bunch look better coming off of everything that happened last year. Van Nuys got a win out of the gate with all the turmoil that surrounded them for the last year. To see them come out of the gate well was positive. You know what you're going to get from Birmingham. For them to go to Royal and put 60 on those boys, that was positive for them because they know everybody's coming for them. So that's the sort of statement you want to make. Chavez, everybody knows how I feel about Chavez. Go out there week 1 and put a pasting on the team that you're supposed to. Get the positive vibes going out there. Yes, we know Canoga's in a little bit of a rebuild, but I know people in and around that program believe in Lucius Mills. It's just going to take them some time to get back to a place where they be competitive. And because of that, what did our leader do? You go in there like a mature football team, and you pace them. So does it say it says less to me about what Canoga is and more about what our leader might be able to do this year? I'll get into the Taft Westlake game, but there were some positives that definitely pull out of a game. If you look at a 59-13 score on the surface, if you just look at a scoreboard, you'll say, "Oh, one team got pasted," like somebody jumped in a comment of a video we posted. But sometimes scores don't really tell the truth. We'll get into that a little bit later. And that Granada Franklin game, yeah, if I was both of those coaches, let's go ahead and leave that at a tie as well, because I have a feeling we might be seeing that one again in the open playoffs. But that's what I have for notes.
Man, for everybody who was hoping for some kind of result, I don't blame the coaches at all. Number one, look at this one. It doesn't hurt either of them in the computer rankings that are going to come out because they tied each other. And if they stomp everyone else, see that right there is playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Definitely making moment of here we go. That being said, I'm going to jump into one of the games that we were keeping a close eye on, as we always do. We go in depth on the games we were able to visit. We would like to see all of you. We will see all of you as the season goes on. So the first one, we had a doubleheader. I was at too. First game of the day on Friday, Panorama was hosting LA. It was a 3 p.m. kickoff. And first it was hot. But these teams went out and they battled through it. And at first, it kind of looked like that youth is really going to be something that Panorama has issues with. Having graduated so many people, they are dealing with a few injuries, but again, who isn't? Everyone's going to get banged up at one point or another. Unfortunately, theirs was early in the season, and it was close at first. Both teams scored early, and it kind of was like, okay, this is going to be a running grind, and then that Panorama defense just took hold and didn't let LA do anything. I don't think LA got into the red zone after they scored on their opening possession. And if I remember correctly, I don't have the note for that in front of me, that was a big run. It wasn't them marching the field methodically. I think he broke one, and that was the only score they allowed to LA all game. Now, the defense is something that they lean on. Panorama, something they always do. And it showed Friday. They were stout for most of the day. They didn't really let big runs break through. And it's interesting because they have some of their key injuries are on defense. Now, Kenny, you're going to like this one. They have their most athletic linebacker has been converted to safety, so he can come down and play like you used to.
Mm-hmm.
Come in and stuff the run. And he comes and he can read the field. And this is what Coach was telling me. Because he has that ability from the linebacker position, he is doing it at safety. And, just hope they don't run into a passing attack that can take advantage of it too much before the other kids can regain their strength and get back on the field. But I'm going to take a moment, and before as I wrap up, I want to spend a couple moments on Keanu Kelly. This kid is special. He is special with his legs. He's got a bit of an arm. And when he is locked in, he will lead this iteration of the team to big things. Because this is his team now. The seniors that they were leaning on last year have graduated, and he's a junior. So he now has this year and next year to really put his stamp on the program, really try to tell Kennedy that no, last year's regular season defeat was not a fluke, even though Kennedy got their revenge in the finals, right? But this is what you're looking at is, okay, he had a decent first game, dealing with cramps, and then they had the big lead, so they didn't really put too much on him late in the game. But as the season goes before they face Kennedy, if he can continue to just take one step forward week in and week out, I honestly believe Keanu is going to be a really, really special player in this program.
Yeah, and the only thing I have to add to that before we move on is we know what the Panorama program is at this point in terms of the identity that Beltran has built there with that group, where they lack numbers. They more than make up with it with the size of the heart in the dog and these kids in the way they fight you every week. So now you take a kid that the coach believes in Keanu Kelly, who, and quite frankly, in conversations before the season about his belief that this could be a kid that if he continues to sort of progress, he may have a guy who he believes might be the most explosive player, not just quarterback, but he might have the most explosive player potentially in the Valley Mission. this might be the key or the piece that helps them get over that hump that they haven't, that they've been right there ready to burst through the door and get some hard and really hoist some hardware. Maybe this kid might be the key to that. And it sounds like he had a really good game out of the gate, and we'll hope he can continue to progress and continue to do that as the season wears on.
You causing me to switch up on the fly. The burst and the excitement that Keanu brings, that actually, and what you were talking about, most explosive player, that is where the shift came. We know who's at Kennedy. And we'll get deeper into him in a minute. But I'm going to shift over to Sylmar real quick, because that's the first league game for Sylmar and Panorama. Panorama went into Sylmar on homecoming last year, and they didn't escape, but they put down a feisty Sylmar team. Sylmar was trying to make it a game, and Panorama seniors last year really stamped it down. Flip side this year is you have Sylmar being led by Jace Mims, and Mims on Friday went off. Like I said, it was a 40-14 final. They were everywhere, and the story from Kaylee, she was going to join us. She's not feeling well. Get better soon. Is Jace Mims was all over the field. He was getting hit, popping up, running the route, getting the ball, getting hit, popping up, and he had his fingerprints all over their win. So that's kind of looking ahead with Sylmar and Panorama. Sylmar does have things they need to clean up. If Sylmar gives Panorama the ball on the 50 every time, they're not only going to give up 14 points. This is going to be a shootout. And so after the game, coach was pretty specific. He said he was going to let the boys enjoy it, but they got a lot to clean up going into week 1 and preparing for that Panorama matchup in I think week 5. So, but that game aside, you were at our kind of sleeper of maybe this game is going to surprise some people. Coach Emerson at Taft has been saying he expects big things in year 1. He's scheduled like he expects big things in year 1, and you were there for all of it. So take it away.
So before I jump into Taft, I want to add something to the end of the Sylmar conversation, because what is exciting about what happened at the game that Kaylee was at was, we know Jace Mims had his handprints all over that game. But what will make Sylmar ultimately a dangerous team for teams like Panorama and Kennedy to deal with is the fact that they have senior leadership at the quarterback position with McDonald, and also alongside of what Mims is doing, you also have the kid Will Clark, who had 2 explosive touchdowns in that game as well. And shout out to that young man, because he sort of embodies what we do here in terms of covering the city. That was a young man who jumped in my mentions, sent me a DM and said, "Hey, y'all should come out and watch us play. Come watch me play." And then you go out and have 2 touchdowns, one of the long variety where you could break a tackle and go 60 yards up the sideline. That's somebody that's putting his money where his mouth is, and that sort of encompasses what they are trying to build at the Sylmar program in terms of, last year was us trying to figure it out. This year, we want to compete and we want to win. So if you're telling me that Sylmar has those sort of weapons, a young man that'll jump in your comments and tell you what he's going to go do, and then he backs it up, that's the attitude of that we look for with these kids in the city section, and that's what's ultimately going to make Sylmar dangerous. So switching gears about teams who are potentially going to be dangerous, Westlake came into Taft. Taft is opening their brand new building, the brand spanking new facility. The atmosphere, the energy was right. The uniforms were clean. Taft went back to more of one of their old school look with the red with the white stripes and the gold helmets, sort of trying to embody that energy of what they were in the past. And you kind of saw it on the field. Now, yes, Westlake came in, did what Westlake was supposed to do. They won that game. The final score was 59-13. Kind of got away from him at the end, but at that point, that's just sort of how those games sort of go. Westlake was a big team up front. I mean, those boys were huge. That front seven cast a shadow when they walk past you. As I always like to say, when you're talking about teams, they look like what you expect Southern Section teams to look like. So they were supposed to come in and win that game. For anybody who want to say, oh, well, you're talking up Taft, oh, they lost by 30, they lost by 40. Shut up. If that's all you're looking for in terms of a win and a loss, then good for you. That probably means you don't know jack crap about the game and what you should have been watching, or what you would be looking for, and what happened during the game, what it means for a team like Taft going forward. Because guess what? This same Westlake team beat the brakes off of Birmingham last year, and then what did Birmingham turn around to do when they got back in the city? They took all of that. They took all the lessons they learned from playing a tough opponent like that, and then they tied fire to everybody's behind that they played all year long. So let's get into the positives that were out of this game for Taft. Their first drive. We know that Taft has kind of switched gears. Emerson is implementing an air raid offense. The energy is different. They're utilizing weapons all over the field. And you saw right away that this team feels different than what we've been used to seeing from Taft the last couple of years. They took the first drive of the game against Westlake and drove it right down their throats. Devin Conroy made a play with his legs, found Leo Lesham open in the back of the end zone, and Taft actually scored first in this game. Now, it didn't stay that way for long because Westlake then took the kickoff immediately after the touchdown, tied the game up, and then there was a pick six. They got the lead, and then sort of it was an uphill fight for Taft at that point, trying to kind of chase the game, which sort of leads to mistakes when you're trying to force the action and trying to work your way back into a game. But that's neither here nor there. We saw when and to give Westlake their credit, they've got some incredible athletes over there. I'm not shortchanging anything they're doing. Alberto Ion was incredible in the kick return game for them. They had a senior running back. His name's escaping me, but he had a big touchdown run. If anything, when you looked at what Westlake did to Taft, which for the Taft coaching staff, especially on the defensive side, they know that there are things that they could clean up. It was mistakes in assignment football. A couple of guys who should have been in position to make some tackles got washed down in the piles on certain plays, which allowed for Westlake speed to kind of get outside, and they just kind of hit chunks. It wasn't like it was just a methodical pounding where they just Taft could never get off the field. Problem was they just kept getting hit with chunk plays, and if anything, Taft really controlled the time of possession in this ball game. If I'm to be completely honest, it's one team controlling time of possession, maybe not finishing drives the way they could have, and the other team, just because they're talented and they got speed everywhere, would hit you with chunk plays, and that sort of lended to what happened on the scoreboard. But you saw flashes of potential for Taft in the city section and what they may be able to do this year. Devin Conroy, the quarterback, yes. He's going to have to clean up some of the interceptions and the mistakes he was making, but some of those mistakes that he was making were indicative of a guy who was trying to make plays for his team. It wasn't like he was just inept out there. There were plenty of times where he was just running for his life and trying to figure it out and make something happen on the fly. Sometimes because he was getting flushed out, that he would miss a receiver wide open on the backside. So there were just some things that I'm sure when they got in film in the morning yesterday, they probably looked at some of those things and said, okay, be aware, be cognizant of what you have, because they have had receivers open all day. If to be completely honest, Westlake's DBs had a little bit of trouble keeping some of these smaller, quicker Taft receivers in front of them. That if they in situations where Taft's line is not going to have to deal with that much size, they're going to pick some teams apart if you can't cover on the back end. Leo Lesham and Jacob Peary, that combination at the receiver position, these guys were always open. It was like 7-11. They were open. It was just a matter of Conroy having enough time to kind of get the ball to him. Sometimes he just had to kind of eat it and take off and run out of bounds. But those were also things that were positive for the quarterback, that don't beat yourself, allow the opportunities to happen, and I think they're going to be fine there. Michael Mansoray was a man amongst boys. He had to go up against that front seven of Westlake that was huge across the board. He took some licks, but he still had 12 carries for 57 yards. He still ran for almost 5 yards a clip. So what does that tell you? When he gets in the city section against teams that might not be as big as what you saw from Westlake, there might be some teams. A guy like him, if you got him in the backfield, it's like hitting the defense with a ball peen hammer over and over and over again. You hit anything with a ball peen hammer enough times, something's gonna break. So there were definite positives on the defensive side of the ball. Again, some mistakes in assignments, but you saw the talent they have on that side of the ball. You saw kids flying to the ball. Sometimes they would get out of position, they would get out of gaps, that would make it easier for Westlake to sort of pop big runs or mistakes and gaps. But you saw what Dakota Garner's potential in the secondary was. Amir Dutt played a really good game. He didn't really get beat like that in the game. So there's plenty of things for Taft to be positive about. They'll take this 59-13, throw it out the window. Week 1 starts anew. And if anything, that same Los Angeles team, these poor guys who had to deal with Panorama this week, they might run into another buzzsaw this week with Taft, who is going to want to make a statement to anybody who's thinking that, oh, see, look what happened to them when they played Westlake. They're going to come out this week, and I have a feeling they're going to show everybody, oh, no, we are a problem, and we're still going to be a problem here in the West Valley. So that was the big takeaways for me. Yes, they lost the game, but there were plenty of things that they did good that's going to show up on the tape that they're going to take, and they're going to hammer some people to shit.
And that's going to be exciting to watch. There's going to be numerous times where we probably find ourselves watching Taft just because of what they're trying to do this year. And they'll be facing some other people we want to see. So the key there is we're looking for the matchups. And there's always going to be key matchups. Now, speaking of key matchups, our game of the week, the VST gem of the week from Kenny's Valley Gems. Cleveland went into Kennedy, a rematch from last season. And though it was a win, again, for Cleveland, just like last time, I did not see two teams that play in different leagues, one being West Valley, one being Valley Mission. I saw a Kennedy team that believes it belongs in D1, and I saw a Cleveland team that has aspirations of marching towards a D1 title. And we're going to jump right in. The typical players in Cleveland led the attack. Right? Like we said, this was a 49-27 final. And you'd lean on the people you lean on, right? Donovan Powell is going to be their bell cow. Now, the more they run the game, the more they run the ball. The games are going to be shorter in terms of time, less possessions, things like that. So Powell had 12 touches, but he went off for 135 yards, 3 touchdowns. Excuse me. He took the second play from scrimmage, 59 yards to the house. Now, that's where we shift and we look at what Kennedy's doing. Kennedy responded immediately. And this was typical, fast and furious offense, and went down the field, play, and punched it in the end zone. Now, Corey Hall was among the people who went in to block the extra point attempt. I haven't had a chance to review the video to see who exactly blocked it, but Cleveland blocked it 7-6, and that was the closest that Kennedy was at that one point. And it's not a knock, right? It was week 0, and there was a lot of week 0 things happening. Okay. Cleveland had multiple penalties that negated big plays, including a very, very big Corey Hall touchdown. So that's something they'll be looking to clean up. Gunny was talking about that, step by step to get to league and do things. Penalties is a big one. They have some youth that they're working through. And, some of that shows. Now, I'm going to let you touch on one of the players in a moment, but we'll get to that. Now, the thing that we're talking about youth is they have youth in the quarterback position. And they're going to learn, they're going to get through. They did have a transfer like we had talked about in our previews. He can't play for a few more weeks. So they're going to lean on the other kid and kind of find a way to do things. Now, like I said, Corey Hall did his stuff too, right? He was in on the block. He had that run call back, but there's a reason Corey Hall's playing defense at the next level. He had a 30-yard pick six, and before that, he picked up a fumble inside the 5 and turned it around and took it home. So he had
by the way, he got credit for that block kick as well.
Thank you. Because I knew he was in. He was one of the 2-3 hands that was right there. So he's got a block kick. He got the pick six, fumble return for a touchdown. Oh, and he had a rushing touchdown for 14 yards. So, find a way to keep him involved, and you don't really want to run his legs off too much. And it helps that they have a Donovan Powell. It helps that they have a David Maciel, who had 10 carries for 66 yards in relief of Powell to keep him fresh. So on the ground, they have their weapons. If the passing attack can kind of stay average, I would say, this team is going to do some great things. And shift into Kennedy. They have a young quarterback who surprisingly looks more polished than you would think as a sophomore. This kid is a born leader. And he finished the game with a decent stat line. 17 of 29, 219 yards. He had a touchdown. They credited him with 2 interceptions, but I thought the second one was a flea flicker, and it wasn't him. I got to go back and look at the video on that. But your boy, our fan of the show, somebody we love to watch just go crazy, Alonzo Fuentes Gutierrez. He had 23 carries, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns. The fumble return that Corey had was Alonzo fumble, but as I was talking to Coach Cassidy after the game, on the sideline, they were talking about it, and Lonzo said he was approaching the pot, he was wrapping up, and Cleveland took it away. They came in, pulled shoulder, pulled, the way you're supposed to when someone's going to wrap up. The ball was pulled out, scoop and score. Now, that's kind of the big thing in my takeaway when I look at the 5 turnovers that were credited in the game. I think only one was an actual giveaway. The rest were takeaways. Cleveland went in and took the ball. So credit there. There is some things that they're going to want to clean up. Of course, week 0. And they're shifting a little bit away from last year. Remember, last year they had the dual back system, and it was ground and pound and then fast and furious at the same time. Just keep going. Now they're kind of incorporating a little more passing, run. So there's going to be a bit of growing pains, but I still love it. I mean, like I said, passing. Gio Nelson had 6 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. Bentley Castro had 4 receptions for 74 yards. So the weapons are there. This team, based on what I saw, Kennedy is still the team to beat in the Valley Mission, even though they're not the defending league champions. They are the team. They are currently as constructed from what we see the team to beat. You got to go through them to win the Valley Mission.
Yeah, for sure. Like all roads lead through Kennedy in the Valley Mission. Like that, there's no mistake in that. Like I said, Panorama is going to have something to say about it, but they acknowledge it. Sylmar is going to have something to say about it, but they acknowledge it. This is the team that, despite however they finish, they were the ones who finished the deal last year. Like, so you can say they came up short last season in terms of what they wanted to do in the Valley Mission, but they're the ones walking around with a championship, with a city title in their back pocket. And there's more than enough talent on that team who went through that grind, who experienced that, the adage is you take losses or you take lessons. What they did last year was they took those lessons from those games, from the Panorama game, from the beginning of the season when they played Cleveland and Granada and came up short in those games. You saw that team sort of transform by the time they got to the postseason, and they took everything that they had learned about who they were, building on their own identity, and they rode it all the way to a championship. So coming into this season, like you said, there's a difference when you see a game unfold, and one team is just clearly better than the other. The other team doesn't look like they can play with them. And then there's a time when you watch a game and you're like, man, you clean up a couple of things here. Yes, that one on the goal line where he got the ball ripped out, that's good defense. There's nothing you can do about that. That's a defense making a play. But yeah, putting the ball on the ground, making certain mistakes, yes, you will take yourself out of the game or find yourself chasing the game against a team as talented as Cleveland. So those are things you just kind of clean up. This might be 3 weeks from now. We might look at this as it was week 0. It was a blip on the radar. You play one scrimmage, but that doesn't necessarily get you ready for Corey Hall and these boys when you got to see them right out of the gate. That's not exactly a cupcake that you lining up in week 0 to kind of work your way into the season. So ultimately, I think Kennedy's going to be fine. Lonzo's a dog, right? Like you were talking about, sort of having to figure out some things and maybe being a hair off in the passing game a little bit. Even though they've got some kids who made some plays, but there's going to be a transition. Last year, we were talking about our guy and Abramian sort of being that 1-2 punch in the backfield. But now Lonzo's the lead back. Last year, he was the lead receiver. So there's a bit of a transition in terms of what this offense sort of looks like. The kid Montez at quarterback, born leader, also as a true freshman last year, was sort of a pet project for the head coach who's at Taft now, Emerson, where they spend a lot of time prepping and getting him ready for this moment, because everyone in that building, and you talked to them last year, said he's not ready now, but when he is ready, this will be the best quarterback in the Valley Mission. Everybody from Cassidy to Emerson to everybody in and around that program told you what you saw with your own eyes. They said that this was coming, and it's going to be a bit of a work in progress. But once he gets it and once he's ready, and the talent and how the game slows down matches the leadership and what he brings to the field, they are going to be a problem to deal with. On the Cleveland side, like I wrote in the preview, we know what Corey Hall is. There is a reason why the Pac-12 has been all over this kid alongside Peyton Waters at Birmingham. It's because that dude is special. Sometimes they are just dudes that it just looks different, right? What they can do on the field is just impact everywhere they are. No matter where you put them, they're going to make an impact. The question for Cleveland was coming into this season is, we know what that kid is. Who were going to be the pieces that stepped up around him that allowed him to trust his team to do the jobs in front of him so that he can just do what special playmakers do, which is just come in and clean up. Someone comes and rips the ball out. Don't worry, I got you. No one's running me down from behind. This is a scoop and score. Okay, on the offensive end, okay, yeah, it might be easy to sort of bracket him in coverage, but if Donovan Powell and that running back room are pounding away at the front seven, and now they got to load the box, you can't bracket him if you've got to load the box this season. That's going to help them on the offensive end, especially when they they have to sort of figure out what they're going to do with the pass game until we get to midseason, and things probably look a little bit different in terms of what they're doing with their signal caller. So it's just a matter of other guys stepping up. Them having a linebacker who can in Okalola, who was all over the field in this game. If that guy's controlling everything in the front seven, Corey Hall can do whatever the hell he wants to do on the back end. That makes life easier for him. That's going to make life easier for them defensively. And now you're talking about a team that comes at you with real balance, with the ultimate playmaker on both sides of the field, and they are going to be a problem. That is how they're going to be able to contend with Birmingham and Granada. And when we know what those teams are, it's other guys sort of stepping up and helping Corey Hall. Last year, we knew what Dijon Stanley was at Granada, right? But when you looked at what made them special, is while that guy's kicking your ass, you still can't deal with those bookend defensive ends on the other side of the ball, which made life easy for Dijon because I don't have to even guard anybody because they can't get a pass off, right? On the other side of the ball, they've stuck him at the quarterback position because he had three other running backs besides him that as soon as you key on him, they can beat you. You win in the city section with balance. You win in the city section with maturity and other guys stepping up and making playmakers around your stars. That's how you get it done. And it seems like Cleveland might be sort of kind of getting to that place with their leadership and the maturity around Corey Hall that they might end up being a real problem. They were already a problem last year, but now they might be looking like a team that might actually be able to wrestle away the West Valley from the likes of Granada and Birmingham.
And I mean, that's why we play the games, right? We got to get out on the field, 11-11, smash some pads, and let's go. So there's excitement in these programs. I was really excited with what I saw on the field in the two games I was at. And honestly, I'm looking forward to a really, really good season from a lot of teams. And in saying that, I wouldn't be surprised if any of these league winners is like 3-2, and they win because of a tiebreaker. Because there's some depth in some of these leagues. There's some dogfights that are going to be happening. But yeah, I'll tell you right now, do not be surprised if one of these three leagues as a 3-2 league champion that wins because of a tiebreaker. Could see 4-1 easily. But I would not be surprised if we've got 3 teams that are at 3-2 and the one on top has tiebreaker. So it's gonna be smash mouth. It's gonna be what we want from football, and we're gonna be here for all of it. So thank you guys for watching. And thanks for taking the time. You like what you hear, hit the subscribe button. You can always leave a comment. We read them all. We respond. We love the engagement, and we're here for all of it.
Yeah, man. Like I said, if you've been with us from year 1 into year 2, this is just the beginning. It's going to be exciting. We're going to break all these games down. We're going to have tidbits. We're going to have information. We're going to talk to these coaches. We're going to be out here. So thank everybody for watching. Leave a like if you like what you listen to. Subscribe. Tell your mom. Tell your friends. Tell other students. Tell faculty. Tell anybody who will listen what we're doing, because this is exciting. And it feels, from my perspective, that we are in a little bit of a renaissance here in the city section, because there is so much talent everywhere, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure you know about every dog, every program, everybody who's going to be a problem, because like I said, there's a reason why the Valley produced the majority of the city champions in the city section, because that's how we built out here. And like I said last week, the city is up because we all stay 10 toes down. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and we're going to keep bringing this out to y'all.
See you guys next week.
Peace.